Have you ever found yourself complaining about a modern traffic ticket or maybe grumbling over an annoying parking fine? We've absolutely all been there. But what if I told you that in the ancient world, minor everyday offenses didn't just get you a piece of paper tucked under your windshield wiper, they resulted in some of the most horrifying, baffling, and downright bizarre punishments imaginable. Welcome to This Explainer. I am so excited to dive into the weirdest corners of ancient legal history with you today. Today, we're exploring ancient laws, the bizarre, the brutal, and the baffling. Looking back, it's incredibly easy to just dismiss these extreme laws as random acts of ancient cruelty. But as we're going to see, they were actually highly structured systems. These laws were built on maintaining cosmic order, ensuring spiritual hygiene, and enforcing absolute state control over literally every facet of human existence. It's a wild ride, so let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Bizarre Rules of Daily Life, Bureaucracy in the Ancient World. So you might think excessive government red tape is a modern invention, right? Well, the absurd ways ancient governments micromanage their citizens will make your local DMV look like an absolute breeze. Imagine, for just a second, being a judge in China's Qin Dynasty around 200 BC. You've got a suspect in front of you. You need to know if they're legally an adult, liable for adult punishments. But there's a huge problem here. Birth records are basically non-existent. You have no real way of verifying this person's actual age. So how do you prosecute them? Well, the emperor came up with a highly unusual, purely physical metric for this. That metric was exactly 1.4 meters, or about 4 feet 11 inches. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was a brilliant unifier of China, but he was also reportedly quite short, standing right around 4'11 himself. So he decreed that you were only considered an adult if you were as tall as him. If you were shorter than 1.4 meters, you were legally a child. As you can probably guess, this made the Qin courthouse an absolute paradise for shorter criminals who could literally just plead that they were children. Let's move along and see how this kind of thing builds across other cultures, because ancient bureaucracy was notoriously quirky pretty much everywhere. Take ancient Athens, for example, where civic duty was everything. If you dozed off during a public assembly, officials would literally patrol the crowd with a rope dipped in wet red paint and slap it across your clothes. You were publicly branded as a slacker. Meanwhile, over in China's Sui Dynasty, handwriting was serious business. If imperial exam candidates wrote with messy calligraphy, they were forced to drink a full bowl of liquid black ink. No way around it. And in Sparta, to discourage greed and luxury, the government just banned gold and silver entirely. Instead, they forced citizens to use massive, incredibly heavy iron bars as money. And get this, they deliberately ruined those bars by soaking them in vinegar so the metal became brittle and totally useless for anything else. Moving on to Section 2, the absolute power of family, control inside the home. We need to take a serious turn here. We're stepping away from the quirky bureaucracy and into the harsh, highly controlled, and deeply emotional reality of ancient dynastic life. The state didn't just control the streets, it controlled the family. Take the Qin Dynasty, for example, which had a heartbreaking state-mandated pre-marriage crying ritual. Before wedding, a bride was legally required to weep for exactly 1 hour every single day for 30 days. But she didn't do it alone. In week 2, her mother was forced to join her. In week 3, her grandmother. By week 4, all the aunts and sisters were crying together. This wasn't necessarily about actual sadness, It was a rigidly enforced legal display of filial piety and affection for the family she was leaving behind. And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme double standards embedded in ancient domestic laws. Take the Code of Hammurabi from ancient Mesopotamia. The law explicitly permitted men to have extramarital affairs with servants and maids. But for a woman caught in an affair, the punishment was absolute. She and her lover were bound together and tossed into the Euphrates River to drown. The laws ruthlessly protected patriarchal property rights way above any concept of human fairness. Speaking of the patriarchy, the Roman law of patria potestas, or the power of the father, granted men absolute life and death authority over their children. A Roman father could legally sell his own son into slavery. But wait, it gets weirdly comical. Let's say the son works hard, earns his freedom, and comes back home. The father could just sell him again. And if the son got free a second time, the father could sell him a third time. It was only after that third sale that the law finally stepped in and said, okay, you've tried to get rid of him 3 times. He is officially, legally free from your control. But, not all domestic laws were just about property. Some were deeply psychological. In ancient Egypt, the murder of a family member was a horrific disruption of divine balance. Yet, if a parent murdered their own child, they actually weren't executed. Instead, the law forced them to hold the dead child's body continuously for 3 days and 3 nights. It's honestly hard to even wrap our modern minds around the psychological devastation of a punishment like that. It was meticulously designed to enforce overwhelming grief and public shame, without violating the parent as the sacred source of life. Section 3. Cosmic balance and spiritual hygiene, maintaining the universe's order. That Egyptian law hints at something much, much larger. To us, a crime is a secular offense, right? You break rule, you pay a penalty. But to ancient societies, human crimes could literally infect the universe. The ancient Greeks called this concept miasma. Miasma was a terrifying spiritual pollution. If a murder occurred, it wasn't just a tragedy for the victim's family. It ruptured the actual metaphysical fabric of the universe. If this cosmic stain wasn't scrubbed away through precise legal rituals, they believed the gods might curse the entire community with plagues, crop failures, and total societal collapse. Ancient justice was quite literally about saving the world from spiritual infection. Because of this intense fear of miasma, Athens established the Prytaneon Court. And I still can't quite believe this one. This was an actual judicial tribunal dedicated entirely to prosecuting inanimate objects. Seriously, imagine this. A worker accidentally drops a piece of timber, and it hits and kills someone below. The worker flees. The Athenians would literally bring that lifeless piece of wood into a courtroom, put it on trial for murder, find it guilty, and officially banish it by casting it into the sea, all just to rid the city of the blood guilt. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how far it pushed things. Section 4. Punishments that defy belief, the extreme limits of the law. Because they viewed crime as a cosmic threat, the lengths to which these societies went to deter it resulted in punishments that just completely defy belief. There's this famous quote from the 4th century BCE orator Demades regarding the first written laws of Athens from the 7th century. He said Draco's laws were not written in ink, but in blood. Draco was a lawmaker tasked with codifying the city's oral rules, and his name is exactly where we get the modern English word draconian. Just to give you an idea of how intense Draco was, stealing a cabbage? Death. Smuggling the region's famous figs? Death. Even just being idle in public? Death. When Draco was asked why he assigned the death penalty for such incredibly minor infractions, he chillingly replied that he believed the lesser crimes absolutely deserved death, and he simply couldn't think of a punishment worse than death for the major ones. But, the ancient Persians might have actually found a punishment worse than death for corrupt officials. If a judge was found guilty of accepting a bribe, he wasn't just executed, he was skinned. His skin was then tanned and turned into leather, which was used to upholster the very judicial chair in which his successor would sit. So every single day, the new judge had to literally sit on the tactile, horrifying consequences of his predecessor's corruption. Talk about a deterrent. And yet, the Roman poena culi, or the penalty of the sack, might be the absolute most elaborate nightmare of all. This was reserved exclusively for parricide, killing a parent. The convicted person was beaten, hooded, and sewn into an ox leather sack along with 4 live animals. A viper, symbolizing maternal betrayal. A monkey, representing madness and a grotesque caricature of humanity. A rooster, the symbol of domestic ferocity. And a dog, representing impurity. The thrashing sack was then cast into the sea. Why all this? To completely isolate the criminal's contaminated body so it could never pollute the sacred earth or the sky. So the crucial point is, Section 5, the logic behind the madness. What these laws tell us today. These laws weren't just blind, unthinking cruelty. They were deeply calculated, desperate attempts by fragile societies to maintain order and survival in a world that felt utterly terrifying and unpredictable. Which leaves us with a rather profound question to consider. If the bizarre and brutal laws of the ancient world so perfectly reflected their deepest fears, their cosmic beliefs, and their values, what will future historians, thousands of years from now, think of us when they dig up our legal codes? Thank you so much for joining me today to explore the fascinating, terrifying world of the ancient legal system. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.